Okay, we're going to start in just a moment. I'd like to call the Henry County Planning Commission meeting of April 20th, 2023 to order. We'll start out with roll call. Dale Cole. David Fisher. Absent. Marcia Gratner. Absent. Kenan Gray is here. J.R. Martin. Here, right? Okay. Okay, Terry Matney. Bobby Plummer. Lori Pritchett. Jason Roberts. Okay, we have a quorum, 7 out of 9. So, commissioners, you should have had in your email earlier this week, minutes from our last meeting, which was 2 months ago, February 16th. A lot was covered in that meeting. Are there any additions or corrections? If not, I take a motion to approve. Moved by Dale, seconded by Bobby. All in favor, aye. Opposed, nay. Passes 7-0. We have a case number B2265, presentation request by Crystal Tapley, 3349 East County Road 550 North, Newcastle, for a commission approval for 2 tiny homes as tourist homes on adjacent property located at 3353 East County Road 50 North. And if those are you, Justin? Yeah. I had a note that you might be part of the presentation. Yeah. Justin Hellman, yeah. Is that correct? You have the floor, Justin. We have paperwork, and you just passed out, I think, a PowerPoint. If you wait just 30 seconds, we'll wait for everybody to have a copy of what JR is passing out, please. Is your microphone on? Is it green at the bottom? It'll be green. It'll
okay. There we go. Ooh, that's pretty.
Just speak naturally into it.
All right, there we go. All right, so we're looking for permission to be able to turn what was an existing home 4-bedroom, 2-bath house into 2 vacation homes. When I met with Mr. Green, there was nothing in the guidelines stating whether or not they can do this in a rural residential land. And so I'm here to present a little bit about why we want to be able to do this. I'm representing Crystal and Chris Tapley that want to start this business right next door to their property, and why it's going to be beneficial to the community. So if you look there, I don't have a clicker. Oh, did you go with 1 or 2? Did you? Yeah. So go with 2 because I kind of changed some things up. Basically, we've got Fox Valley Cabins is the company name because there's some foxes and turkeys and deer that run south of Summit Lake. Corey, I didn't know you were going to be here, but EDC inspired this as one of the top, or is the top tourist attractions of Henry County. And so we don't have any place for people to stay. There's a campground, but there's no lodging. And so that's what's inspired Fox Valley Campgrounds. His mission is to support the community by providing a unique and peaceful getaway close to home. What used to be there, click, I don't know if I got a click, I can get a clicker out of there. What used to be there was this dilapidated home here to the left of our slides. 5-bedroom, 2-bath was existing at one time. And then on to the right there, it's been demolished and fallen down, and now it's just a vacant lot in which Crystal bought 2 to 3 years ago. All right, click. And this is the rendering that we are looking to try to provide for that area. 2 cabins side by side on the property with a little bit of an oasis there in the background. Chris's passion is to be able to help people experience a good experience of Henry County at Summit Lake because their family has been a part of that for more than 25, 23 years. So that's what the rendering is, provided by our local Stephanie Tedder for the rendering. Click. Click. Now, to the reason we're here, right? And that is the setbacks and the property in which it is existing. Those 2 little white dots there are the cabins in which they are going to be laid out. And I tried to do the best I could with the distances based on our beacon map that we have. And if you can see, we're meeting all the setbacks that you guys, or the county, is committed to make sure that we have. 72 feet, we're enough, more than 3 feet from the property lines to the east and the west, and then more than 90 feet from the back property lot, and then over 100 and some, I think it's 100 and, oh man, it was 190, 180 feet from the road frontage. So Tom, hi, Crystal, and Chris have been working on this for many months to be able to provide that to you guys. What I'm here to do is ask for permission, if it's okay, to be able to do a 2-unit on what was an existing 1 unit so that it can be a vacation home for somewhere to people to go so they can stay and enjoy the community and the county. Click, maybe? And then, you know, Chris is going to be the entrepreneur behind all of it. He's the one that's going to run it. And he's going to be next door. That's where they live. And so he is going to be able to provide an opportunity for people to have a great experience here. Tom and I, and we discussed this of why us, why now. There's many people that have kind of came to this property or wanted to do this in many different facets. And getting to know Chris, this is what he's living for. This is what he wants to do. This is how he can provide a great experience. And one of the stories I was trying to think about in my head was I was traveling to a vacation. And as I was traveling there, my grandparents put all their money into this vacation for me and my family. And we're driving down in this 1989 Suburban with all the bench seats, and we're crawling back and forth. And we get to this destination, and at this destination, we were given a card to be able to play around on, and we got to go to this ice cream shop, and no one really watched us. We got to go into a little area to be able to meet with the characters and talk with them. And what I remember about that vacation is not, you know, where I went, the characters that I talked to, but it was how they talked to me, the way I felt when I was there. That is what experience you're going to get with Chris when you come to this community in this county. And so that's what I wanted to put behind that and, you know, add that into our presentation. So I appreciate your time. Any questions?
My understanding, Tom, correct me, what you have before us is currently rural residential, surrounded by agricultural, and currently we don't have anything, as Justin said, we don't have anything.
Yeah, let me put what we have in here. First of all, we have an allowance in our code for a commission-approved use for go to there's an overhead view of the property, and you can see Summit Lake to the north, and it's not a densely populated area. Go to the next one. Mm-hmm. There's the zoning of the general area, and you'll see that most of it is agricultural. Some of it is rural residential. In all of that area up and through there, in the agricultural area, you are allowed to have, through commission approval, a tourist home And a tourist home is a dwelling that has 5 bedrooms or less that is used for temporary accommodations for tourists. The building that was there had bedrooms that would qualify it as a tourist home. While this is not an agricultural area, the particular zoning for this lot, as you can see, most of that area is, and at one point it was. You could require it to be rezoned to be A1, or you could leave it as rural residential if no one objects.
I know when we spoke a couple of days ago, there hadn't been any response as far as letter-wise or phone-wise.
I have not had anything. Have you had any response from anybody?
Only verbal, not written.
Yeah, we haven't even had,
There's
we've gotten
no-
no phone calls or no letters.
No opposition?
No opposition.
And you've received no opposition?
No.
Okay. Is there a preference to keeping it rural residential or rezoning to A1? Because it allows.
I see no reason to go either way. I mean, it's fine either way that it is,
Okay,
I think,
so
in
these
that area.
two-
I'm not sure why it was ever zoned rural residential in the first place.
So these 2 tiny homes are 2-bedroom each? Or
Yes,
one-
correct. 2
So-
bedrooms, 1 bath.
So the 2 would fall under the 5 if we kept it?
That's the way we're approaching it.
Mm-hmm.
Since we don't have anything in our code that specifically addresses their project, we could rewrite the whole code to do that, but we know that takes time, and I'm not sure exactly what we'd do anyway to do that.
And really improve the situation?
It wouldn't change the situation at all.
Okay. and
Septic and health department has approved.
Yes.
Okay, and you're proposing a mound system? A mound septic?
yeah.
I think that's what I saw on the permit, yes.
Okay, and a well?
The well is already existing.
Yeah.
Okay, so you would use the existing well, and the health department has given the approval?
The well, yeah. Approved,
Okay.
did they give approval?
And you're surrounded to the north, agricultural, south agricultural, east agricultural, and west is a single-family home, which is rural residential, and you've heard nothing?
No opposition.
Okay,
Question?
okay.
I got, it says 3353 East County Road 550 North. Where's that at?
It's just south of the southernmost part of the lake, right on, so if you go, I think it's right where Blue River School is, and you head down just about a country block, and then you turn right, and you kind of curve around there on the south side of the lake. It's right across the street there.
Looks like a 3-fingered claw coming out, that's Summit Lake. At the very top, a little bit to the left of the center. So you kind of anticipate a person that would go there would be going to Summit Lake,
Most definitely.
and the campground's right there in the upper right, isn't it? Summit
is
Lake
correct.
Campground?
I think it's like 1.5 miles for 1.7 miles by road to the entrance to Summit Lake, and you can see the Summit Lake part of the campground up there in this picture, so it's really close to Summit Lake.
So this could be an asset to Summer Lake then, right?
Definitely an asset, to Summit Lake and to the community. Yep, and the county.
We go to KOAs, and a lot of times I'll have these camping cabins. Nicer ones would kind of look like the rendering you have, the 2-bedroom ones. Most of them are just 1 bedroom with a kitchenette. So, and I know Summit doesn't have anything like that currently. It's just a pull-in campground.
This has been an inspiration for me ever since I heard, Corey talk about how Summit Lake was shockingly the #1 tourist attraction in Henry County, and you didn't really realize it because it was there. And ever since, and being a part of the Henry County Saddle Club and all of those things, they came to me with this idea, and it just kind of had synergy behind it. And now we're here to be able to see if this is something, because of the code, it has to be brought to you guys to kind of hear what we have to approve.
And Tom, you researched that there's 23 Airbnbs in Henry County. That's higher than I would have I didn't realize there were that many. And they range from $43 a night to $1,436. What part of that range would you anticipate?
We've been toying with the idea, but we don't want to jump too far ahead without your permission. But we're toying around with like the 300 and the 600 the week.
Per week?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But you have a nightly and a weekly, or is there a minimum nightly?
Well, that's, I mean, part of the conversations that we're
Okay.
trying to have, but yes,
Okay.
nightly, we would rent it out for nightly, but obviously for a weekly, that's what's gonna happen is a lot of fishermen are gonna come and wanna stay for the week, and we just know that's kind of where it's gonna be.
Okay, well, I've hogged the microphone. Other PC members?
It's a very good question, too. Yes, there is talks of expansion if it does, but that is another conversation that we'd have to put together for here. There is availabilities in different areas. Tom and the Tapleys and I have been kind of looking for that, but this is something that has to kind of be in infant stages to kind of get going a little bit without making big ripples in the codes. The codes are kind of what we're concerned with because it doesn't exist. And if you know, right now we're staying within what the guidelines state of having a vacation or a, what'd you call it? A tourist house. And being that it was an existing 5-bedroom, now we're 2-bedroom, 1 or 2-bath. Expansion is a whole nother project to kind of bring forth. But yes, there are plans to see it being bigger and better if this takes off. Thank you.
The only question that I have, because you answered all my other questions,
Good.
it didn't appear that there's a drive directly into that property, or I couldn't see it looking at Beacon. Is there?
There is a
There
driveway
is a
to the
drive.
left. It's a little
Okay.
faded now with the grass and stuff that's
Okay.
there. What they're going to want to try to do is have a turnaround, and then there's going to be kind of a U. There's a couple of trees right now, kind of where you see that blue line to the far
Yes.
east side. There's a little bit more of a driveway there, not the neighbor's driveway,
Right.
but around the trees there. And a gazebo, there's an existing garage there now, but that, yeah, there's going to be.
Yeah, I was trying to look at some of the pictures on Beacon, and you couldn't really tell if there was a drive.
And it's hard to figure out where that driveway is going to go due to the construction part of it and getting the septic and stuff. We just don't know how it's all going to,
Thank you.
plan out.
It looks like it fits well within our comprehensive plan for the county. How would you like to proceed, Tom?
You should probably ask for comments from anybody that wishes to speak in favor or opposed to the project.
Okay, other than Justin, anyone else would like to speak for? And we'll give you 3 chances to going once. This is speaking for. Going twice. Gone. Anyone like to speak in opposition to this? You know those people. He said he doesn't know you. You want to come up and speak?
For or against? For.
Oh, come on up. Don't ignore Terry for the time being.
No, we were excited to hear about it. We live just a little bit up that way on Highway 36, and we've toyed around with the same idea and think it's a great idea. So we're in favor of it. Elise Raw, R-A-W.
You're a part of the minutes. Anyone else? I didn't want to hurry that long. Anyone else like to speak in favor? Anyone like to speak in opposition? And we'll give you the 3 count on that too. Anyone like to speak in opposition to this being proposed? The 2 tiny homes on 550 North near the state park. Last chance. Okay. Any other questions for Justin? This, 3 questions? Yeah, to CA, okay. It's a commission approved, so who would like to read those? Our attorney, Mr. Rao, thank you.
Talk loud. I can talk loud anyway. All right, so this is the one where, as a commission-approved use, there are 3 questions for the planning commission to consider. The first question is as follows. The proposed commission-approved use is to be located in a zoning district where such use may be permitted. Dale Cole? David Fisher? Oh, David's absent. Kennan?
Here, yes.
And Jake Martin? Terry Matney? Bobby Plummer? Lori Pritchett? Jason Roberts? Question number 2, the requirements set forth in the zoning district in this section for such commission-approved use will be met. Dale Cole? Kennan Gray? Jake Martin? Terry Matney?
Yes.
Bobby Plummer? Lori Pritchett? Jason Roberts? The third question, the proposed uses are consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of these regulations, will not substantially and permanently injure the appropriate use of the neighboring property, and will serve the public convenience and welfare. Dale Cole? Kennan Gray? Jake Martin? Terry Matney?
Yes.
Bobby Plummer? Lori Pritchett? Jason Roberts? Passes in the affirmative.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Keep that for your notes.
I didn't have any old business. Tom, do you have any old business? We'll look forward to seeing the progress up there and how it goes for you, and wish you well. New business, we have a presentation by Corey Murphy. He passed out some information in a kind of a pamphlet booklet form. This is the Henry County RDC on an amended declaratory resolution regarding expansion of the economic development areas. So Corey, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. In the light green, or the left-hand side of your pocket, unless you've messed it up already, but that's all right. That means you've looked at it. With the light green, I want to start out with just a briefly, what is tax increment finance? And so the Redevelopment Commission is the body that they're appointed. It's a 5-member commission, 3 of which are appointed by the county commissioners and 2 are appointed by the county council. The Economic Development Corporation serves as the contracted staff for the RDC, so that's why you get to listen to me. The county auditor serves as the treasurer of the RDC. Essentially, the Redevelopment Commission is a department of county government or a division of county government. Tax increment finance, or TIF, is a tool which captures the increases in assessed value from new development to finance projects designated to stimulate economic development activity. TIF is used in 49 states. It has been the primary tool for the industrial park south of Newcastle on State Road 3 that now hosts over 1,000 employees. TIF was used to attract Honda Greensburg, Toyota Princeton, Subaru, and West Lafayette, among other numerous job creation and quality of life projects all across Indiana. If you've been following the news out of Indianapolis, they've been talking about the Boone County LEAP project. Eli Lilly just announced a several billion-dollar investment. That area is what I call a super TIF. It's actually an innovation district, and so it's a special tool that the state legislature created and gave to the Indiana Economic Development Corporation to use as they see fit. Why am I talking about Boone County? It's competitive. And so we try to be as competitive as we can be for projects. There at the bottom on the green sheet, I'm not going to go through those, but those are a representative sample of projects over the years that the county has completed or partnered in or with through the use of Redevelopment Commission. The next page is a graphic. This graphic was created by Baker Tilly, and I robbed and duplicated it. So essentially, the base AV, if you look at an empty field with no structures on it, that is going to be the base AV. As something is built there, that would be the increment. And through a process, if a area is designated as a TIF and something is built there, usually commercial or industrial, and in some limited cases residential, the taxes flowing from the improvement or the increment go to the normal channels. So if you're the taxpayer, you don't know that you're in a TIF district. Your tax bill is going to look exactly the same. Your tax bill is going to be the same as your neighbor's in terms of rate. Administratively, the county sends that money to the Redevelopment Commission. And the Redevelopment Commission invests those funds into infrastructure or incentives for projects. There's a clock. You can't have a TIF forever. The clock starts once debt is issued, and it's a 25-year clock. Many of our TIF districts across the county are expiring in the next 10 to 15 years. And so all of that captured AV goes to the overlapping taxing districts. What that does for the overlapping taxing districts is it's a downward pressure on the rate because the pie got bigger. It's less of a burden on the individual taxpayer if the pie is bigger. Notice I didn't say the rate goes down, but it is a downward pressure. And so that's good. So that is an overview of TIF. Why are we here? That's on the yellow sheet. Now, I believe Mr. Green provided you a resolution, and that's actually what we want you to adopt. And I have a copy of that resolution. And so the last whereas on the first page says, whereas on April 11th, 2023, that wall of text written by an attorney, of course written by an attorney, I love attorneys. That wall of text that carries on to the next page, and it wasn't written by Jim either. By the way, Jim Milliken's the Redevelopment Commission attorney. He's my friend in case I get in trouble. All right? So the bullet points on the bottom half of the yellow sheet is that 2 paragraphs. So, what is the plan amendment process? A project must be in the plan for the Redevelopment Commission to consider participation or implementation. However, and this is very, very important, not all projects will be implemented. If you are in Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts, this is the Be Ready. A plan is a Be Ready document. We try to look out in our cloudy crystal ball and see what's coming down the pike, and we think there might be an opportunity for participation, we put it in the plan. But not everything in the plan is going to happen. Why do we do that? Because the plan amendment process is costly. It is a 45 to 60-day process, whether it's one amendment or a lot of amendments. So that's why we have several amendments here. We try to do this as little as possible. And when we do it, we try to get our money's worth. So, for a project to be, for us to consider participating, a project has to be in our plan. However, not everything here will be implemented. And the perfect example of that is the acquisition list. if you look on Exhibit B in your stapled packet, there is a lot of property there. Right, so A1, if you flip it, A1, A2, B's in there. I'm sorry?
Your list isn't up to date on the owners.
Yeah, we don't track that. We track it by parcel IDs. We're not going to purchase every piece of property on here. Don't have the resources, don't have the capacity. But for us to consider it, it has to be on our acquisition list. So that is a perfect example of it's got to be on our plan, but we're not going to do it all. The new ones for this amendment are in bold, and that is on B4, the bottom of B4. Harmony Corp., Joshua Tompkins, and then several Trent Dishman parcels. All right, back to the yellow page. The approval process includes actions by the Redevelopment Commission. So a few weeks ago, they adopted what's known as amending declaratory or declaratory. Amending declaratory. Think estimate, plan, draft. So it comes to you, and then whatever you do goes to the Board of County Commissioners. Then the Redevelopment Commission schedules a public hearing, invites comment, and then adopts what's known as a confirmatory resolution. There can be a difference between the amending declaratory and the confirmatory. And I'm going to point out some of those things here in a minute. There doesn't have to be, but there is an opportunity to make changes through this process up until the RDC holds its public hearing and the county commissioners take final action at the very end. Now I want to go through the amendments. So what are the plan amendments included in this update? It's to create a new tax increment finance allocation area adjacent to the existing industrial park. It's out on County Road 400 South. Last fall, you heard a rezone request for these parcels. It's the exact same parcels. Why do we want to do that? Well, we want TIF to be available as an economic development tool to attract new investment to that area. The second bullet point is to create a new allocation area in anticipation of a housing TIF project. You recently heard this on a rezone. So this is on ground adjacent but not connected to Raintree Heights. It's near County Road 200 North and State Road 3. Why do we want to do this? Because of inflation and because of the difficulty of building housing development, we want to make available tax increment finance as an incentive to the developer, potentially. We already have 2 of those developments in our county. One is near the Y, and one is in Knightstown near Hoosier Gym. Both of those used what is known as residential TIF. A developer-backed bond, no other public funding pledge could be issued, and that's a separate approval process. So you're not approving any bond here. We're setting it up on the taxes generated on the new homes. To fund what? Roads, water extension, sewer extension, drainage, sidewalk, public infrastructure. This could make that project viable and also put a downward pressure on the price of the homes. If you go back to your packet of exhibits and go towards the end, there's Exhibit C. Exhibit C is a single-family housing development program for the Redevelopment Commission. It outlines what we propose to do. If you go to the second page, or C2, there's a section in there that says acquisition of property. I've even highlighted it, and I've said delete highlighted section. The Redevelopment Commission does not, will not acquire property associated with the housing development. So that will be voted upon and changed at the public hearing and at the confirmatory resolution. Yes. Yes.
And that's the part that relates to eminent domain?
Well, we don't have the power of eminent domain, but it's that section, the acquisition of property.
Okay.
Yes. Yes, it does. I agree, and we are not. Keep in mind, this was written broadly to give the Redevelopment Commission as much flexibility as possible, and it's on me. I didn't catch it. I didn't catch it until 2 or 3 days ago. So I'm going to repeat. It says acquisition. It says we're going to. We're not. And that will be changed in the confirmatory resolution. Sure. No, that was with the respective units. So that was the Newcastle Redevelopment Commission and then the Knightstown Redevelopment Commission, but using the same statute.
Does Middletown have an RDC?
They do.
Okay.
The next bullet point doesn't require an exhibit. That's good for both of us. So we want the opportunity to continue to fund a talent attraction program. We want to be able to use funds to support downtown building redevelopment in the smaller towns across the county. Essentially, we want to be able to model what Newcastle's doing on a smaller scale and assist some buildings potentially across the county. There's a potential housing development that might occur between Walmart and Jamestown. Emphasis on potential and might. The owner is looking at that. The Newcastle Redevelopment Commission is open to creating a housing TIF there. We want the ability to enter into an interlocal agreement. So the County Redevelopment Commission enter into an interlocal agreement with the City Redevelopment Commission and provide some upfront funds potentially for that project.
I could get on Snyder Beacon, but is that within the city of Newcastle?
It is.
Okay.
Yes. We want the ability to provide funds toward the construction of a child care facility. I've already talked about updating our acquisition list. We want the ability to contribute to existing building improvements and or new construction for the purpose of housing EMS stations in the southern and the northern areas of the county. So all of those bullet points, we want the ability. We may not do any of them, but we want the ability to do them. We want to put them in our plan. So I have summarized what TIF is, why we use it, and then I've talked about this beautiful wall of text. What questions do you have? No. It would allow us to use the funds from the existing TIF district on many of those plans. Where? Is what? Okay, so if approved, there would be 2 new allocation areas, AKA TIF districts. The first one is the 94 acres out on County Road 400 South, adjacent to our industrial park and adjacent to an existing TIF district. The second one would be the housing project. Yes, those would be the two new allocation areas. Well, until something's built on either of those properties, there are no TIF funds.
How many TIF districts does the county currently have? I think there's like 7 or 9,
Well,
if
sure.
memory serves me correctly.
Yes.
Somewhere around in there.
Yes.
Last time I looked, there were, I'm not going to say
I can name them,
specific.
but I don't want to bore you.
Yeah, I think there's somewhere between 7 and 9 current TIF districts.
Yes. We do. We issue bonds on the basis of our TIF revenue. I don't know that I'm following you. The amendments before you create two new allocation areas. So once something is built and it's assessed, then the taxes off the increase would flow to the redevelopment commission. Yes. So if you have a field with no improvements, the county and all the overlapping taxing districts receive whatever they receive now. If a TIF is created, they receive what they continue to receive. They give up the increment, oftentimes in what is known as a but-for clause. But for the incentive, TS Tech wouldn't be here. But for the incentive, Honda Greensburg wouldn't be in Greensburg. So we are going to do that, but that doesn't have anything to do with the amendment. Sure. Yeah. We wouldn't need the amendment to run water and sewer to the ground that you all rezoned. We need the amendment to attract investment to build on that land.
I think an advantage is annually Baker Tilly does an annual report for the TIF districts for the RDC, and he goes, Jason, usually similar from Henry County, goes through and explains the process somewhat like you do, but a lot of the monies that we have in the RDC comes from the, I would say, the industrial park TIF area. Would that be safe to say? The monies that have been accumulated on these TIFs that are 10 years old, let's say, that would be the source of revenues for the...
That's one of the sources of revenue.
Not the single most?
No.
Really? What's the most?
Well, the most is the industrial park TIF, but there are other TIF districts.
Right. And I think she's right. I think there's like
there are other
eight or nine.
Yeah.
And now there'll be more.
But unless something's built, there's nothing generated.
I was
The
gonna
county
ask.
doesn't lose anything.
I think, and I hope I'm not muddying the waters by asking you to explain this, because I think when you went through the Boar's Head TIF district, or TIF process, I think that cleared up a lot of questions and explanations as the previous one with the bond and how all that worked. So I don't know if maybe that explanation will either muddy the water more for some people or clear it up.
Can we be in the boat together?
Sure.
All right. So Boar's Head was looking to come here in 2014, late 2014. Fast forward to last year when they were looking to expand the original processing facility. So That's on the south side of 400. Their attorneys and executives came to me and the County Redevelopment Commission and, proposed $126 million expansion, 100 new jobs, and they wanted to know if the county would participate with them in an incentive. And so we worked with the commissioners, the council, our legal counsel, and we put together what is known as a Tax Increment Finance Economic Development Commission Revenue Bond. Tax Increment Finance Economic Development Commission Revenue Bond. And if you get on the Google and you go to DLGF and you look at the county's debt, you're going to see a bond issue for about $18.5 million. And you're going to, oh my goodness, the county is on the hook for $18.5 million, and this bond was issued in 2022. What did the elected officials do with $18.5 million? All right, that's enough theater. You get my point. That bond is solely payable from, only payable from Boar's Head's taxes. If Boar's Head doesn't pay their taxes, then nobody pays that bond, and nobody can come to the county and say, pay up. So it is a self-funding incentive. We did a very similar structure in 2014. You'll see a bond issue for $12.2 million issued in 2014. The same routine applies. It's issued through the county being the conduit, but it is not guaranteed by the county. And it does not count against the county's constitutional debt limit. So it is a way to incentivize capital investment and jobs in our county. The other way TIF is used is we receive funds on a regular basis. We have different kind of debt. So we have debt for the new road that we built. We issued a bond that is payable from our TIF revenues. The good news is it's only payable from our TIF revenues. The county didn't pledge any other resource. So we receive the money, we pay our debt, we have money left over, cash on hand. We can use the cash on hand for infrastructure projects or from one of the projects that I talked about down here. That help? Did the boat sink?
Ask a legal question of either Attorney Milliken or Rao. Is the term "but for" written anywhere in Indiana code? But for, and is that spelled with one T or two?
Yeah, I think it's an expression. My name's Jim Milliken. I'm an attorney here in Newcastle and represent the Henry County Redevelopment Commission. And what Corey has just discussed with you is an example of the but-for test. But for the establishment of this original resolution 25, 30 years ago, through this process, but for the amendments that have occurred to that resolution over the years that have allowed the Economic Development Corporation, Corey, and the Redevelopment Commission to have the tools in their toolbox to be competitive. I want to circle back to what Corey said a while ago. It's a competitive environment, and Henry County wants to be in the race, wants to be competitive. And the sole purpose for starting the amendment process now for this amendment is to be able to continue to be competitive, to continue to give Corey, the EDC, the ability to compete for industry, for jobs. And as Corey said, the but-for example is but for the tools that we have that allowed TS Tech to be here, that attracted them, but for those same tools, the ability to use tax increment financing for incentives, for Boar's Head, all of that infrastructure that's in the industrial park wouldn't be there. Those industries wouldn't be here, and the jobs and the revenue generated for the benefit of Henry County wouldn't exist. The county would have continued to receive the same taxes on the bare ground, but the improvements wouldn't be there. So, Corey described this process. This is the starting point. We have to come first. Well, the Redevelopment Commission started working, trying to envision what amendments we should try to put in our plan last year, and in January worked with Ice Miller, Lisa Lee, an average Newcastle girl at Ice Miller, and Jason Semler, who had the disadvantage of growing up on the north side of County Road 200 and went to Blue River, you know, which hadn't hurt him too much, and trying to put together these amendments to come before you and the commissioners after you to do the best we could to get the tools we need. We're asking that this resolution be adopted so that it can, the next step, this isn't final. Your actions aren't final. You're in an advisory capacity, but this gets the process started. It goes next to the county commissioners. There's another public hearing. There's another hearing before the, in this case, it would be the Newcastle School Corporation, because the amendments could affect them. And then it goes back to the county commissioners for final approval. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So this is an order of the Henry County Plan Commission. They determined that an amending declaratory resolution and economic development plan as amended, approved, and adopted by the Henry County Redevelopment Commission conforms to the plan of development of the county and approving said resolution. If you look at page 3 of your handout that was given by our zoning administrator, at the end it alludes to Exhibit 1A, which was in the packet that Corey provided and reviewed for us. Whereas the act requires approval of the amending declaratory resolution and the housing program by the Henry County Plan Commission, that is us. Now, therefore, it be ordered by the Henry County Plan Commission as follows. Number 1, the amending declaratory resolution and the housing program conform to the plan of the development of the county. Number 2, the amending declaratory resolution and the housing program are in all respects approved. 3, the Secretary of the Plan Commission is hereby directed to file a copy of the amending declaratory resolution and the housing program with the permanent minutes of this meeting. After summarizing that 3 pages in 2 paragraphs, what's the next step that we need to do, either Tom or Sean? We need to take a vote or?
Yeah.
I would entertain a motion to approve.
Go ahead.
It's been a motion to approve,
I'll say it after.
and someone seconded it. Go ahead. We have a motion and a second, seconded by Bobby, and any comments? Tom?
I would add that while this resolution includes mention of a TIF district to be created in an area that we've been discussing north of town for development of housing. Corey and I talked about a residential TIF when I first came to this office, which was long before the current project that we know is being worked on happened. So this is something that Corey has wanted to do, and there has not been a residential TIF in the county. Knightstown has one, Newcastle has one, and hopefully this is a stepping stone to future TIFs for the county and hopes to attract more housing.
And I know when all of us have spoken to different real estate agents, there's a need for housing, and especially a particular price range. Our Kiwanis Club had a real estate agent speak to us a couple weeks ago, and at the time, I think he said there was 25 houses available to sell in the county of 49,000 residents. In other words, the demand was great, the supply was extremely limited. So it's been moved and it's been seconded to approve this resolution, and we'll go forward back to the commissioners. And then there's a public hearing, as I understand, and back to the RDC, and there's a process. And the only other comment, I know Corey and I have spoken, there's legislation in this long session relating to residential housing also, and he and I have been talking about the pros and cons of that as well. Any other questions, comments? If not, all in favor of this resolution, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Nay? Okay, so it would pass 6-1, correct? Okay, thank you. And thank you, Corey, and thank you, Councilor Milliken. Abstain? Okay, so did you abstain? Okay, so for the minutes, it was 5, 1 abstention, 1 nay. 5 approved, which is a majority. Have the amendment to the Henry County Redevelopment Code regarding residential swimming pool safety, and I'm going to turn this over to our zoning administrator, Tom Green.
This is a proposed amendment to our development code regarding residential swimming pool safety. Some of you may know, and some of you might not know, but over the past year, I think we had 6 requests for zoning appeals to make exception to our zoning. One of the things, the only thing that is missing in our swimming pool safety section of our code is a retractable, what they call safety cover. That's not in our code, so the only thing we could do in our code was have a wall or a fence, and the state code has a wall, fence, or a safety cover, and most pools being built today that are in-ground pools, people are putting the safety covers on. So this just aligns us with what is being done. And in all of the cases of appearances before the Board of Zoning Appeals, the Board of Zoning Appeals approved the use of the safety covers. So we might as well make it part of our code because we're allowing exceptions to every request anyway.
And this corresponds to state.
Absolutely.
codes
It
and-
mirrors exactly, all I did is cut and paste the state code.
Okay, well, I suppose that's a good thing that we're in compliance and correspond to the state code and not in juxtaposition of. So do we need a motion to approve or take a motion to approve these standards, which would then correspond with state standards regarding swimming pools and swimming pool safety?
I'll make that motion.
Who was it? Okay, I really can't tell up here. It's a motion made by Terry. Do I have a second? And was that,
You have just one question?
okay,
Jason seconded.
okay.
This applies to above-ground pools,
The-
in-ground
No,
pools?
no, only in-ground pools.
So what are we-
Above-ground pools require a removable ladder.
And
That-
that's already
that's a
in the code?
Yeah,
And-
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Okay, so
Yep.
this is specifically for in-ground?
That's correct, yeah.
Any other questions? And it was moved by,
I got
Go
a
ahead.
question for you. What's the reasoning for bringing this up? Have you had a problem now, or has it been a problem? Or-
Yes,
or just
we've
up
had problems in that we don't have the same guidelines as the state code. And almost every pool builder in the area that comes into the county starts to build a pool, and then they find out that without getting a variance and requesting a variance, which is a process as well as an extra expense, they have to make arrangements. If they don't want to go through the variance process, they have to put up a fence. Some of them don't have room for a fence, and sometimes fences can be more expensive than some of the pool covers. And a lot of people don't need a fence. They might be out in the country. There's no way anybody's going to roam into their pool area. We've had some people that do both voluntarily. So it slows down the process if they have to go through another step.
Well, I'm all for safety, and especially swimming pool.
Yeah.
But there's a swimming pool, in-ground pool that I see, nothing around it, wide open. What do you do to police places like that? Do you fine them or what?
We can. If we know and someone calls us up and says, hey, they don't have a fence and they don't have a pool cover, can you go look into it? On 100% of the calls that I went on last year that didn't have a fence, they had a pool cover, and the motor was broken.
But
And
you
they
know-
hadn't closed the pool cover for a couple of years, and we aren't the pool police, but their insurance company is.
How many pool people really use the covers other than wintertime?
I can't answer that question.
we do.
I think, all the people that I know that have them use them religiously because it keeps their costs down, especially if they have a heated pool, and it's a lot easier to keep them clean.
There's major cleanup if you don't have a cover.
But
Major
we don't spend time going around looking for people that left their pool covers open.
We have an above
But
grade.
also, we don't go around looking for people that have mice in their barns either for the nuisance ordinance, so.
We could hire a couple more people and call them enforcers.
Wait, let me
was-
write that down.
That
He
was
said
tongue in
hire-
cheek, if anyone was wondering. That was-
President of the council wants to hire more people.
Yeah, well, every department would be,
So basically what we're doing, we're just updating our.
We really are updating our policy to go along with what is the accepted standard throughout the country right now.
if I recall, the motion was made by Terry and seconded by Jason. And any other questions? If not, all in favor of this upgrade to the Henry County Development Code relating to swimming pools, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. 7-0 passes. 7-0. Thank you. Next, we have amendment to Henry County Development Code to allow the building of residential structures with smaller footprint than that is required by current code. And I'm going to turn this over to Tom as well.
This amendment would change the size, the square footage size requirement for houses. There's been, as a lot of people know, there's been a movement towards smaller houses, what some people term tiny homes. Everybody has their own definition, I think, of what a tiny home is. The accepted industry, tiny home industries, criteria for a tiny home is somewhere between 100 and 400 square feet is a tiny home. Having lived on a 400 square foot boat for a number of years, I can tell you 400 square feet is not a lot of room to live in. I don't propose anything that small, but I do propose that we lower our standards so the person that does want to build a smaller home be allowed to do so. Now they can't build a home, for example, on a property that's zoned R1, normal residential, single-family residential area. You're looking at 1,200 square feet. But there are people that would, maybe they're retiring, or maybe they're starting out, or maybe they're just trying to simplify their life. I'm proposing that we move that number down to 576, for example. That's still bigger than what the industry thinks of as a tiny home, but I don't want to see a county full of outhouse-sized homes either. So that's the reason for proposing these changes. I don't propose a change in lot size. You still have to have the same size of lot, but if you want to build a smaller structure, I think they should be given the opportunity to. That does not mean that I think there's going to be a bunch of people come in and build a bunch of tiny houses everywhere. That's not the case. And regardless of the size of the house that someone may want to build, they still have to meet the state codes, which is what we follow for design of that house and how that house is constructed. Not if it's not a house. It has to meet all the criteria of a house. If it doesn't, and we do have that issue. We've had people put structures, small structures, say it's 600 square foot. You can buy a pre-built 600 square foot building, and they put it on a lot, and they don't tell anybody that it's there, and they live in it. We don't know until someone calls us and asks us if someone can live in that, and that usually generates a visit by our building inspector, myself, and someone from the health department. Occasionally, that person has done everything right, and they just didn't bother telling anybody, in which case it's easy for them to come in compliance. More often, they are not in compliance with any of our code whatsoever, and they are instructed to change their thinking, get the permits, change their property, or move it.
Is that opening of the door that they could make it any size they want? Or
Nope. No. So, for instance, like I said, on R1, you would find that the new standard would be 576 square feet would be the minimum size home for a single-story house. There's still a requirement. They can't just build whatever size. They can't build a 200 square foot house. Lot size stays the same. Stays the same as current code.
I think you're kind of thinking, sorry, I should use the microphone. I don't know, Jason, if you're kind of thinking the way I was, because my first concern is we're going to have a whole lot of high density.
That's why the lot size stays the same.
That's why the lot size stays the same. Okay. Because my first question was, please don't, let me go this way. Instead of doing this, could we add an additional zoning district to rezone that would apply to tiny homes versus just changing the size of homes?
I looked at doing that, and that would be very complicated.
Okay. My concern was we're going to have
That's
this with 12 little teeny tiny houses in it,
That's why the
high
That's
density.
why the density
Okay,
stays the
yeah,
same.
okay.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, are they gonna become tourist homes now?
It's coincidental that just happened all along. If you'll go over I think Bobby knows, and I think Kenna does, when I first took this position, if they came in and looked at my whiteboard up in the corner, very top thing up there was tiny homes, because there had been so much inquiry over the years about tiny homes.
But I see where you're going with that too.
Yes. Well, here's, after what happened tonight, I'm going to have to change some things in our code that addresses things like tiny home, tourist homes, and densities of those. That will have to, that's the nice thing about going through the CAU process. But there's, we can adopt a code that addresses those very issues.
Well, we do have a code for tiny homes. They're called house trailers.
Actually, yeah,
You're not wrong.
yeah, you're not wrong, but you kind of are, because the trailers are bigger than that. Yes, yeah.
Is there,
But back when, not to say you're younger than I am, not to say you're old, but back then, yeah, I mean, it was, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was my thought too.
In theory, it does, but because lot size comes into play, they could. If they had the lot sizes, that is true. And I knew that question was going to get asked, but that had nothing to do with this. No, but that had nothing to do with that rezone. Yes, that is possible, as it would be possible for anybody, anywhere, if they had a minimum size lot, to put that size home on. And it's no, because that is not a commission approved. The development standards are not commission approved changeable. You can't change this. No one can apply to ask for a smaller home. No, it's not a variance. You can't do it. It's whatever is in the code, and they have to meet the code.
my question, Tom, was where did you come up with the 576? I mean, is it just a random number, or is there something that you looked at that corresponded to that? Or?
Well, it is. What's the standard length of measurement for most construction? Okay, so it's based on that. And it's keeping in mind that this is bigger than what the industry norm, the top end of industry norm is 400 square feet, and anything around 600 square feet is considered a nice, smaller home. Everything today is getting smaller. You know, washing machines, smaller refrigerators are smaller. So this is a concept size that would work and make it an affordable project for somebody because it is based on a standard unit of measurement. Nope, no, not. Yeah.
Oh, I know, just,
Yeah.
and sit and then move about.
Now, to address that, I do know of a company that is doing those, but the one that I've actually went out and visited was 600 square feet. That's how big it was, and it was built on a chassis, and they brought it in and put it on a full foundation, and it was really, really nice. You would not know. Right, yeah. And most of those wouldn't. if it's going to be a tiny home, it has to meet the state guidelines for a house. It has to be built like a house. It has to be a house. It can't be a trailer.
A lot of information going on. Just to recap, what problem are you trying to solve here in Henry County by doing this? Again, why are we here?
We've had a lot of requests. People call up and they say, I want to build a small house. They use the term tiny home, and then when you find out what size they want to build, most of them are talking around that 600, 800 square feet. They don't want to build a 1,200 square foot house. The majority of them are not on a small lot. A lot of them are on 2 or 3 acres. They're retired people or they're people starting out. They don't want a big house. They don't have any kids, or their kids have moved on. They're looking to build something affordable and simplify their life. A lot of other places do it, and we don't even have that as an option. I don't know if there's going to be 5 built or 25.
Or none.
Or none.
Yeah.
I do know that this gives us an option for the person that calls up and wants to buy the 600 square foot modular trailer that doesn't meet code. It gives them an option to go, no, you can't put a trailer out there that looks like a pole barn on wheels, but we'll let you stick build one. Because it's just a small version of a regular house is what we're asking for.
I'm just trying to move this along. Any other questions? You requesting that amendment to the development code, is this something we need to approve? Or?
This is actually a recommendation that we would take to the commissioners, and they would have final approval since it is a code.
Would anybody on the commission like to make a motion?
I'd like to see it wrote out instead of us just sitting here talking about it.
What is written out?
The code
So
on
is
the
it
smart
just
time.
the numbers, or are there going to be more?
No,
verbiage?
it's,
All I
Yeah,
got's this.
that was sent with this. That was all in the same.
he's talking, the current is the first page that's kind of in a pinkish, and then what he's proposing is the second page, which is yellow highlighted.
Yeah. Which was it was emailed to you. So then you're going to ask for commission approval for everybody that builds a house?
Like in a subdivision versus me just having my 1 acre lot or whatever and building a tiny home versus a subdivision. Because I think my concern is, I won't say concern, but I'm teetering on, I don't want to see a subdivision come in and do, even based upon the lot size of the 6,000 square foot, and just do a whole bunch of, I won't say I don't want to, I'm just conflicted a little bit.
I understand, yeah.
Yeah, and it would have to be in the right spot, it would have to be the right development, but I'll be honest with you, that the first thing I thought of was
First of all, a subdivision is a commission-approved use anyway.
That's right.
So in developing a subdivision, that can be a condition of, and you say, well, we don't allow a subdivision in that location.
To be tiny. Because I think that's my,
that's
my big, I don't know, JR, if that's your first concern, but that's kind of my first concern is. Right.
But that's under the subdivision development, which you haven't even seen one yet. That's right. But that's under the subdivision development and is an allowed, and every subdivision we have has limits on how big this house can be. Some are 1,400 square feet, some are 1,200 square feet, some are 2,200 square feet. So that is a condition of the development of subdivision. Yeah, yeah. And that's a discussion that someone that would come to us and say, hey, we want to do a subdivision, and you'd, no, I don't think, that's for the attorney to answer. I don't think you can request that. That's asking a little much to tell people. Well, I can tell you that most of them would go, well, we don't have one in our neighborhood. That is all part of the subdivision development, is where the roads go. That's all part of a subdivision development.
As long, if they build them to county standards and they request and they go through the whole big process to.
Yeah,
there's
like
a
I
whole
said,
big process, right.
they can't turn them over unless they meet the standards and build them in the first place. That just, that's kind of one of those things that just happened because that was one of the first property that's become available, because Corey and I have been talking about it for over a year about a TIF, a residential TIF somewhere.
Well, and the water and sewer's unbelievably expensive
Yeah.
to put into these subdivisions.
And really it's, but things like what the size of the houses that are required or you want under subdivision development, you can tell them that that's not what we want in that location.
Again, to move the discussion, I don't want to cut it off, but I would suggest that we either make a motion to table or to approve. The motion has been made by JR and I think seconded by Jason. So all in favor of tabling it for now?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It's tabled, no abstentions? 7-0. Next, we have a resolution allowing keeping of chickens on residential parcels. I assume you've had calls and requests about this topic as well.
At least daily. At least.
A call.
And I don't know how many the commissioner has had, or you, or Terry, or, yes, it's an ongoing question.
Not daily.
It is an ongoing.
It is, and the proposed,
Yeah.
for years.
Mhm, for
Yeah,
years.
for years.
We do.
Yeah, you can't have
You
them,
can't have them.
so.
To try to change to look to see if we want to change the policy to allow people to have chickens in town. Like I live in Strawn. I wouldn't have chickens because me personally, I don't think my lot size is large enough.
Here,
Well,
It's-
nobody does because it's not allowed.
it's not allowed.
I think that's why it's before us
Yeah,
to consider.
It's,
Yeah.
if you have agricultural zoning, you can have chickens. If you have rural residential zoning and 5 acres or more, you can have chickens. If you have rural residential zoning and less than 5 acres, you might be able to get chickens with commission approval. If it's any other kind of zoning, you can't have chickens. So if you had, let's say, 2 acres out in the country and it happened to be zoned residential, you couldn't have chickens even if you were surrounded with 1,000 acres of agricultural ground.
Right.
And I think this is what you're proposing to us to
This
consider.
This is how you address that, because a rezone takes years to get the rezoning. No, we do, but we do it for a different reason than to change a parcel for a residential use. That it's rare that we do that. And this is the best way to address the situation. There have been, well, that gets into a whole zoning thing, which we've discussed as to how some of the zoning that is how it is ended up how it is, and I don't know. It happened before I was here. But most places that have chickens, most counties that have chickens or towns that have chickens have guidelines as to how many you can have. Can you have roosters or not? There should be some guidelines to doing chickens. And if you have an agricultural piece of ground, that's not a problem. But if you are zoned residential, it's an issue for people that want to have chickens.
So this is going to ultimately end up with the county
Yes.
commissioners
Yeah.
as a resolution to change the ordinance.
Yeah.
Do you want to summarize, is this just information for us since it ends up in the commissioner's final approval, or do we need to take action?
Well, you need to recommend it to the commissioners.
You want to summarize what you have here? I mean, the things you just mentioned, you have. The definition of urban chickens, the R1, R2, RR, fewer than 6, no roosters. I mean, you have all that spelled out.
Yeah, that's all spelled out. For those of you that got your emails.
Oh, the nuisance ordinance?
Well, true, in which case, chickens in their enclosures shall be kept in neat, clean, and sanitary conditions, free from offensive odors, excessive noise, or any other conditions that would constitute a nuisance. So if they're constituting a nuisance, we visit them, we fine them. If it's a nuisance, they get fined. Yep. Just like we do anything today. I personally, this just creates a lot more work for my office. So it's like, I don't need to be doing this. But it's his meeting.
Yes, because right now we really haven't gotten into the nitty-gritty of this.
Well, I'd just like to add to what Mr. Green, because I've already contacted him about our area out by Sulphur Springs. And we've got a family out there, and we're in a subdivision, and they've got chickens, and they wanted goats. They wanted goats. Supposedly, he stopped them from having goats.
I told them they can't have goats, yes.
Well, they've still got chickens, which, the only thing my question is what you're sitting here debating is, that's one reason why that we've created an ordinance in subdivisions and in town. If you really want to be part of a farm, move out in the country. Because that's why we live in a subdivision. I mean, I'm not against chickens. I'm not against any kind of animal. I grew up on a farm. But I just like it to be known that they're, just like you're talking about a limited number of chickens. They've still got to keep them clean because they're a stench to chickens. We all know that. And if they don't keep it clean, and who's going to police it? Okay, you're going to limit to a number. Say 3, 4, 5. Okay, what if they get 6 or 7? 8. Who's going to police it? Does the neighbors keep on, which they're already not happy because you're against it? I'm just saying I don't understand, and I understand the chicken bit because of the price of eggs and all this. But why should we change things? Because a lot of these people do not understand by the time you feed the chickens, you build shelter for the chickens, you fence them in, you've got more money there than you're only going to get so many eggs. daily. And a lot of times chickens quit laying. They're not getting anything, but they still got to feed them. I've got a family member, they're big in chickens. But they clean their pen, they keep everything organized the way it should be. But there's a lot of people out there that you're going to give the okay to, and they're not going to do that.
So do you live within the town? You live in the town?
We
In
live
the,
right at the edge of Sulphur Springs, but we live in the Thompson subdivision. We live just, there's the city limits within
yeah.
the next 3 or 4
Yeah, I know
houses
where
we're
that's
down.
at, yeah.
And they've been out there, which they've got a chicken coop built, and you're talking about a rooster. They've got one rooster I know that's going at it all the time, which they don't even have to have
Right.
to raise eggs. They don't have to have it.
you're right.
That's why the ordinance prohibits roosters.
Yeah, it says no roosters in this ordinance. He's proposing.
You know,
6
you
max.
see them sitting around all the time, people in their backyards. Some of them are the cutest little chicken houses you ever seen. But they keep them clean, they keep it ordered. But the only thing I'm saying is, there's times where it's not going to happen. And you're bending over backwards for people to get it. But if they don't go and keep it up, who's going to police it?
Tom.
And I hate to say that because it's like
He said it's more
our
general.
neighborhood called out there when I found out about the goats. He'd already had chickens. I didn't even know there was an ordinance there. And I grew up right there. I grew up in Sulphur Springs, but I did not know it. But they've got chickens out there, and the only thing I'm saying is it's built, they moved it from behind the house between us now, which is right next to our lot.
Yep. That's-
What are you zoned? Do you know? Is he,
It's zoned R1.
it's,
Yeah.
okay.
But
And
there-
this
there-
would apply then.
But there's no covenant about prohibiting chickens there or anything
In
else.
that subdivision.
In that
or HOA
subdivision.
or anything
Some
like that.
subdivisions there are. Raintree Heights, you can't have chickens.
Right.
Other subdivisions don't address it at all. Some subdivisions say you are allowed to have.
So this would address it countywide where it's not
Yeah.
addressed.
Yeah.
You want to summarize kind of quickly the cliff notes of what you are proposing? Then,
What street are you on?
300.
It's on that little section just east,
Yeah.
just
Just-
east. It looks like it's
just go-
right dead, it looks like it
Just
should
go
be
straight
in
out of
Sulphur.
straight south out
Yeah.
of town. Yeah, it's not.
See, actually, all of that.
It is. It's right behind.
That-
You're right.
Yeah.
Right behind it is, but they're not.
It's on the east side
East
of it.
side.
So, to summarize,
Same along where Tim Chapman lives?
Yeah, Tim lives,
I
what, 3
I
houses
never
south
knew that
of me.
was considered a subdivision, and I've been up there.
And see,
pretty much
actually,
all
that
my
was
life.
built in later years, which they're not in the subdivision.
yeah, they're not. It
Yeah,
stops.
they're not, but
No,
we're
that
not-
was all, that was all Tim's
Three-
farm ground
three
there, which,
houses south of you, the subdivision
yes,
stops.
yes.
Is it 4 houses in, there's only like 3 or
More-
4
more
houses
than
in
4
this.
houses.
Yeah.
Yes, that's correct.
now
They're-
now that
they're-
I've lost
It's
control.
Melinda Grounds and Ron Grounds that owns the restaurant, and then,
There are over 100 subdivisions in the county.
Yeah.
Most
which-
people have no idea. The
Just like I
majority of the
didn't-
county lives in subdivisions.
Just like I didn't know there's 35A.
Yeah, so to
Airbnbs.
summarize the 12 points of this ordinance, no rooster shall be kept under provision of this ordinance. No more than 6 chickens on a parcel. Urban chickens must be kept completely and securely, always enclosed and under the control of the owner and on the owner's property. Free-range chickens shall not be allowed on any residentially zoned parcels of less than 5 acres. A chicken coop and enclosed structure for harboring chickens that provide shelter from the elements shall be provided. The coop shall be situated a minimum of 10 feet from all property lines and 20 feet from any neighboring dwelling, and a minimum of 10 feet from the principal dwelling. A freestanding coop shall be 10 feet or less in height. The coop must provide at least 4 square feet of space per chicken. If on a property zoned rural residential consisting of 5 acres or more, an enclosed run need not be provided if the coop is located inside an area completely enclosed by a fence of not more than 6 feet in height. An enclosed run area is to be provided and no larger than 100 square feet. No run shall be closer than 20 feet from a property line. Chickens and coops shall be confined to the rear or side yard of the property. Chickens may be permitted in the side yard which is parallel to the rear of the house. So you can't have them right next to your house side yard, but a side yard can be next to a rear yard. Urban chickens and coops shall be confined to the rear side. Oh, I just read that one. Any chicken kept in accordance with the provisions of this section shall be for non-commercial personal use only and may not be slaughtered on the property. The chicken coop shall be maintained in a sanitary condition and in compliance with all applicable health regulations of the state of Indiana and Henry County. The chicken shall be kept in the coop from sunset to sunrise. All food and waste materials shall be stored in covered containers with tight-fitting lids and located a minimum of 20 feet from property lines. Chickens in their enclosures shall be kept in neat, clean, and sanitary conditions, free from offensive odors, excessive noise, or any other condition that would constitute a nuisance. Restrictive covenants regarding the keeping of livestock or poultry that are in existence at the time of the adoption of this ordinance are binding. The keeping of chickens is an accessory use to a single-family dwelling. The sole purpose of keeping suburban chickens is for the private consumption of eggs by members of the household and not for commercial purposes. In no case shall any product produced or made as a result of any keeping of chickens as provided in this section be offered for sale on any property zoned for residential use. An urban chicken permit must be obtained from the Office of Building and Zoning.
So it sounds to me like the,
Yeah. It's nothing yet, but yeah, once it's a resolution.
I'm gathering part of what he read is not being complied with by the neighbors that you have concern
No,
with.
and I'm not here
Well, you know,
to,
I will tell you right now, in the town of Strawn, who the county forbids chicken coops, chickens.
Yep.
And the town, I believe, their ordinance also forbids
Yeah.
chickens. There are chickens.
I want to say in front of everybody, I'm not here to complain about the conditions right now. Because they're new. I mean, they've just basically got it started. But I know what it can lead into because we've seen some things.
And this is an attempt to try to head some of that off, because we've got some of it out there now that is a problem.
This would give teeth in enforcement.
It
Where
does.
right now we have nothing.
It does. We have nothing.
What this gentleman said right here, if there's ordinance out there that you shouldn't have them in a residential area, then why change it?
But there's. Well, so we didn't even have that until we had a recent ordinance that addressed that.
And the other problem is,
And I'll tell you what, I've shoveled it up.
that field is zoned Sulphur Springs, and they spread manure on it. And that's
That was right behind our house.
made me very mad. And I've
Yeah.
seen them fill close to the
They did it at
creek
midnight.
banks too.
Behind our house, they did it at midnight.
Oh, yeah, they do.
And
Oh, yeah.
the next morning, and it later, yeah.
Yeah. Yep. I know.
But that's the only reason why I'm here, and the other neighbors is here, is because it's just like you said about no roosters in area. You know, I don't see why we need to change something when you've already got it. And we're the ones that's basically suffering, you know.
Well, because, and I will say, Tom and I have had this discussion a lot, because I get a lot of phone calls from people who may have an acre or two, but in Strawn, or Louisville or somewhere else, that they don't meet the requirements to be able to have chickens, but they have the room to have chickens, therefore, why can't we have chickens? I mean, I get it. I understand both sides
I
of
do
it.
too. Don't get me wrong.
You know.
Well, I gotta live next to
And so,
something
I
that's-
think Tom and I have talked about this on and off for a year and a half, probably. Just of what if, or, you know.
And the only thing that I'd like to state here too in front of you is every lot that was through this subdivision is designated 100 by 175 deep. That, when they sold those lots, that's how big each lot is. I own 2 of them, and he owns 2 of them. But the guy that passed away, which originally built the house there, bought one later years. And so he actually owns 2 lots, and so do I. But that's not a big enough area. If somebody had a couple, 3 acres, I don't care what they have, you know, because it's big enough to handle it. But not at 100 and 175 lots. That's the only reason why I'd hate to see it change. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it. So passing this would give you teeth if a neighbor were to call in and complain right now. What do you do? Go out and say you shouldn't do this, but you.
Yeah, right now, we go out and say, you have to get rid of your chickens.
But how do you enforce it?
Well, we can tell them that they are in violation of county code, and we can fine them.
Fine them? Okay. Well, we have a complaint. So, come on up, please, because right now we're just kind of informally talking the pros and cons.
And that process takes 2 to 3 months
Can I make
sometimes,
one
actually.
statement? I'm sorry, before, because my own other, we'll figure out if the microphone's turned on or not. So if Strawn or Louisville or Dunreath or Knightstown have an ordinance restricting chickens and says no chickens, this will not override their ordinance?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay.
Right, yeah.
But even Strawn has we have planning and zoning over Strawn, but Strawn has an ordinance, they have an ordinance prohibiting hoofed animals, chickens within the town limits, so this would not override
It doesn't override
that.
that. It doesn't override any covenant in any subdivision. And most subdivisions have covenants that say you can't. Very few. Very few. Yeah, very few have an allowance. Their neighborhood's one, there are absolutely no covenants in the Thompson subdivision at all. It says none.
That problem is they're in the middle without any town representation.
Oh, I know,
And then they're right there at the county, but
I know.
it's part of town.
Well,
And I didn't realize that wasn't
that's
part
the
of
way it is.
Sulphur
Yeah.
until I
Yeah,
just
when
looked
we
at it
looked
on
at
Beacon.
When we first looked at it, we said,
It's in the town of
I
Sulphur.
said, well, that's Sulphur's problem, it's not ours. And you look and you go, well, they went down the backyard. Why'd they do that?
If you would identify yourself for the record.
You might, into the microphone.
Sherry Jones.
Okay. And what have you to say?
The same thing Gary was talking about. I mean, we've been a small subdivision since 1969. We built our house out there. But they have moved in and they've tried to turn it into farmland. They've built buildings on there without permits. They've had a goat in there they kept in the house to hide it from people. I mean, and they're just building all this stuff and it just looks nasty. I'm sorry. They don't take care of it. They don't care about. So is this new thing you're doing to stop? You said the 5 acre things. I thought that was already a thing. You had to have 5 acres to have chickens. When we looked it up on the.
Yeah, that's been in our code for a long time.
So are you changing that so they can have them, or are you keeping that in there?
Well, the proposal would be to allow people with less than 5 acres
Like how much?
to have chickens.
How much less? Less than an acre?
Well, actually, it ends up being, if you look at, it depends on if it's an old property. Right now, about the minimum size lot you can have is 1.5 acres,
Yeah.
with some exceptions. If you go through a subdivision development, then you can possibly have smaller lots. But if you just wanted to build a house somewhere,
Yeah.
and it wasn't in a subdivision, because subdivision rules that's a whole nother
Yeah.
process. Would be 1.5 acres, nobody could have anything on, you couldn't build a lot at less than 1.5 acres under
So-
today's rules.
You read through those and I tried to think what you were saying. So was this going to make them easier to keep these chickens here, what you're trying to change?
Well, it's hard to say. Easier is a relative thing, because let's assume right now, I don't know how big I know by driving by how big their coop roughly is. But if we have criteria that says how big their coop is, how many chickens they're allowed to have, how big the run can be, and where it has to be located. Yeah, no roosters. And
It has to get a permit.
and they have to get a permit, and they have to come in. It's going to just be, they're going to basically be building a house and a rec area for their chickens, and they're going to have to get it approved for us. We're going to come out and measure it to make sure it's in the right place and it meets the criteria. I've done some what ifs on different size lots with standard houses, and it's relatively restrictive because by the time you start building the coop size and put the run where it has to be, it forces it. There's going to be some people that I know want to have chickens that don't, but they're on a small enough piece of property that they're only going to be able to have 3 because the size that they're limited to, because it's based on square footage per chicken and how big the coop is and where it has to be in relationship to the property lines, neighbors' houses, and their own house.
So down the line, we may just have to eat it and let them have what they want to do, even though it looks trashy.
Being trashy is a separate ordinance, and if it looks like a mess, we passed that ordinance a month ago. We didn't have an ordinance that addressed your place looking like a mess, but that's a nuisance ordinance, and we can do something about that, as this has a nuisance clause in it that is supported by that nuisance ordinance.
Well, I know what they're building butts right up against Sulphur Springs town lines. That's behind us. So, and Sulphur already said they couldn't have chickens in town limits, which they're not actually, but they're right up against the town limit.
I can't address why
So-
Sulphur Spring put their lines right there. No, don't say it.
Well, they did.
Why couldn't you put a radius? It's got to be 2 or 3 miles away from the town
Well, they
limits.
did say something about a 2-mile buffer zone.
Oh, you could, which just eliminates every town.
Is there a 2-mile buffer zone around the towns? That's what I heard at one time, that they control a 2-mile buffer zone around the towns.
They control some distance for some things.
Yeah, they do. For
s-
some things. I
For
don't
some
think
things,
for
it doesn't
everything.
apply to this.
So if we went to the town, they probably could do something or not, since they're right on the town line.
I don't think, you can't extend, the town can't extend their jurisdiction outside of town for everything. They can for some things, but probably not for this.
So that's why I wondered, because since it sits right up against the town line, if there's,
Yeah, but that also didn't used to be the town line.
no, but it is now, since they added all that
Well,
300
I
acres.
know it is now, but
Since they added that 300 acres to the town several years ago.
things change.
We're talking Sulphur. They had that great big 600 acres
yeah.
to the south and the southeast that's
And-
part
and-
of the city
and
town.
she's right, it does abut the town limits, but it didn't used to. It certainly didn't when the subdivision was built.
No.
And the subdivision was built in that location, and, it's outside of town limits. The town, who knows what they were thinking at the time, but they didn't want it in the town limits. And those are nice lots. They wanted a little bit bigger lots than what the people probably lived in town. Those are small lots. So they wanted the option of having a little bit bigger lots for people to build, but the town didn't want to accept that into the part of the town.
Well, I don't know, the town wants them in there real bad. Now, I don't know if they did back then. but
Well, I
think
don't
they
know.
just
They
went
must
through
not
the
have wanted
town.
it too bad because they went out of their way to avoid it when they extended the town limits all the way down south of that.
Well, that's because we didn't want in town limits.
Yeah.
I
I know,
I
yeah.
got a question. Did these people check with you before they put the chickens in?
No.
No,
They didn't get a permit or anything? They just-
no, they were there before I was here.
They just done it on their own?
I don't think they
Yeah,
got
there's
it.
a lot of people do that.
Yeah, even
They
in
do all
Strawn,
kinds of,
even
they
in
build
Strawn.
houses, they put in tools, they
And
build
Louisville.
barns. they
So
do-
long as they don't get no complaints, well, there's no problem then. Somebody says anything.
Did they get a permit to build onto their house and to build all their structures out there?
We did look at some of that. There are permits on file for everything that I know that they did.
If you done it, you'd have to have setbacks from the neighbors.
That's why
From
there's
their house.
that's why there's setbacks in the resolution. Yeah, yeah.
More than 10 feet is what you're saying.
And about a $500 to $1,000.
So Tom, you know, we're definitely creating some opportunities here.
Yeah.
You know, for chickens. You know, everybody keeps pointing their finger back to you. I know that we, you know, adopted an ordinance that gives you some teeth to look into, you know, areas that need to be addressed. You know, I'm concerned that, you know, we may create a problem that you can't keep up with. I mean, you're a one-man band. I'm looking at this realistically. I mean, can you police everything there is to need to be policed?
We stand a lot better chance of policing it if we have guidelines. But that's true. But do you want to eliminate opportunities for people? And that's why we're having a discussion. That's why I hope you're having a discussion to figure out if you're going to allow chickens where and how.
But when this hits the Courier Times, you could get 500 calls about people that don't want chickens that see that there is no ordinance.
No,
and
I
call you.
don't think you'll get 500. It'll be 1,000. It might be 500 for and 500 against.
Said you get calls daily, so.
We do.
I have a feeling it'll pick up after this meeting.
We do. And these guidelines in here, I didn't really, Corey's not here. I did a Corey Murphy, and I just looked at a lot of other places and said, what is working to other places, and adopted their guidelines. These guidelines, interestingly, for the setbacks and stuff, mirror Indianapolis's setbacks for inside the city limits.
They're fairly restricted.
Yeah, but there are lots in downtown Indy, 10 foot off the line on each way. I mean, that eliminates it.
Yeah. That's right. But I think that would.
Thank you, ma'am.
I think
Thank
that
you.
would happen here in some cases
Can I
too.
go online and look at that? What you just read, is that something I can read online?
It's not online yet because it's not been adopted. This is
wanted to
just
see
a
it's online.
proposal.
Yes.
This is just a proposal.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gathering you brought it to us because you felt there was a need that this would be an advantage for your department, yes or no?
It's
To have something in writing as far as restrictions
It's a disadvantage to
or guidelines.
my department because it creates more work, but it's an advantage to those people who want to have chickens and are on a big enough maybe piece of property to have chickens but are not allowed to. So if they have a 2-acre lot that's
Less than
zoned
5 acres, but more than,
yeah, if they're on a residentially zoned parcel right now and they have a couple acres of ground, they can't have chickens, period. And they can be surrounded by farmland. I know. Exactly. I agree. I understand that. Yeah. So, do I, for the person that lives on that 2 acres that's got nothing around it, do I say, well, no, I'm going to let you be in violation of our code and knowingly do so? Or do we try to develop a code? You don't want to start down. Okay, if we
so you start spot zoning?
we're not going to do spot zoning. It's already a mess. If we're going to start down that road, if we start down the rezoning road. I partially agree. Someone probably shouldn't have zoned it the way they zoned it. We didn't. Okay, but if we're going to start fixing it, we're going to start fixing some other stuff too.
And Tom,
So if we're going to do that, those of you that live in A1 area
you're allowed to have one dwelling per 20 acres. Yep. Okay.
So you go out and start tearing down houses that have two?
No, the people that are there get to keep their house, but the next person that comes in and says, I want to buy that lot over there, we're going to parcel out 5 acres and put a house there. I'm sorry, you got to have 20. Yep. Well, all I can say is they've been violating it for. No, but I'm trying to avoid that happening, and we're trying to adopt the code that.
Because I'm getting over talking about chickens.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think we all
I'm
are.
gonna make a motion to table this.
Okay, we've got 2 tables. Do I have a second? This will be our second table of the night. We're tired of hearing about chickens the last half hour.
Well, we've
Could
got
I-
a
let me-
motion and a second. You can either vote yes or no to table.
Can I ask one more question?
Who? Oh, Terry, go ahead.
So, I'm the new guy, so I apologize, I don't know. So, when they talk about a home in the middle of 10,000 acres, not a neighbor anywhere in sight, they want to raise chickens. Right now, they can't. I mean, so can they come to the commission and say, can I get an exception to where I can have chickens?
We don't have a process to do that.
Okay. So what I was looking for is if we had a process to selectively okay it, might that be less work than trying to police the exceptions that you're going to have? So either way, it's like you said, you're going to get hammered. Which one will give you the best opportunity to make intelligent, choices? I know it'll be a lot of work, but which one will let you make the best choices with the least amount of work? You got one side you're enforcing a lot of stuff, the other side you're okaying some stuff.
I think well thought out code is the best way to handle what people should be, what people want to do with their properties. I know there are people that don't have, let's say chickens, that don't have chickens right now that want chickens, but they can't have chickens because we don't allow it by our code for where they happen to be zoned. And rezoning them, in some cases, they can't get rezoned. An example, and I can't think of the subdivision, there's a subdivision about 7 miles west, and all the lots are 3 acres or more. And 3 people in this subdivision of 9 houses want chickens. And they can't because it's zoned R1.
So, in your proposal, and maybe this would solve it, you simply add a step that, one of the requirements is that your surrounding neighbors has to concur. And then if you're out in the middle of nowhere, your neighbors are going to concur, you're good. If you're in a smaller neighborhood, the neighbors aren't going to concur.
I thought about that. And we can do that. I thought about adding a section similar to what we do for CAU approval, in that you have to get permission 2 properties deep or X amount of feet.
That way you've got a process that's well documented, that you kind of got this safety net. It seems like it'll protect everybody, the person out in the middle of nowhere and the person in the middle of 40 homes. So I just thought.
I want to apologize, JR, we just butchered Robert's rules.
Yeah.
You had a motion
That's
to
right.
table,
Yeah.
and Jason, I did not hear the second who did it, so let's go back to that. All in favor of tabling, and you've got an idea from him
Yep.
about the neighbor approval, which I think would be something that these people would be for, because right now they don't have to get approval from anybody, they're just doing it. So it's been moved and seconded. All in favor of tabling the chicken resolution for urban chickens, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. Were there any abstentions? So I would say that was 6-1. And Dale was the nay on that. Any other business? Anyone from the audience like to speak Anyone else? Thank you for being here and your patience. We turn into pumpkins at 90 minutes, which is coming up. No, I guess we've surpassed that.